Thank you so much for your interest in my current exhibition. I am Denise Lauren, fine artist, as well as art historian and presenter. In this exhibit, I've brought together works of art that relate to the theme of the preciousness of impermanence, or more simply, nothing lasts forever. In this talk, I would like to elaborate on how the works I have chosen reflect that theme. Here's a photograph I took of the flowering tree outside my kitchen window at its height in the springtime. I look forward to seeing this tree blossom every spring, and it makes washing dishes fun and special because normally it's not. Seeing this tree makes me happy. I treasure it because the experience is so short-lived. When the blooms fade, the leaves turn olive green with reddish brown at the tips. In Japan, cherry blossoms are symbolic of the transience of life. Their beauty lasts only 4 to 5 days. Then the blossoms fall, making the cherry tree, or sakura, the most ephemeral among blooming trees. On the right, you see the characters for the word sakura in Japanese. The tradition of hanami, literally watching blossoms, can be traced back at least 1,000 years in Japan to the Heian period between the 10th and 11th centuries. Couples go at night to enjoy the romantic atmosphere created by cherry blossoms under the moonlight. Nighttime cherry blossom watching is called yozakura, and it's the inspiration for the painting Moon with Cherry Blossoms in the exhibit. Mono no aware is reflected in the tradition of viewing cherry blossoms and relates to the awareness of the impermanence of life, the quiet sadness around it, and the preciousness of our relationships and experiences, which are all ephemeral. Youth dissolves, beauty fades, homes are lost or left behind, objects become worn, but there is also a beauty in this, another Japanese concept known as wabi-sabi. Mono no aware holds the understanding that reality is in constant flux. Flux or impermanence is the only reality. Each moment we have is a gift. I was born by chance. Had my father died when 5 kamikazes targeted his destroyer in World War II, I would not be here. My dad was a gunner and actually saw the face of at least one kamikaze pilot as the plane flew into the ship. My dad's destroyer was part of the battle for Okinawa, one of the most brutal battles of the Pacific War. Half of the men perished and the ship sank. Later in life, it occurred to me that there was a transference of trauma from the pilot to my dad in that moment that somehow through DNA connected me to Japan. In college, I had a professor whose class on 19th century French art was so interesting that I wanted to take another class from her the next semester. But the only class she offered was on Eastern art. Helen Merritt ignited my interest in Japan, and I traveled with her to Tokyo and Kyoto on a study abroad program. I returned there again with my daughter in the 2000s. That's my daughter on the left. Over the last 2 years, I've begun to incorporate gold and silver leaf in my work, as evidenced in this series that I call the Sakura series. I like the suggestion of radiant light these materials bring to my work, aligning with my formal artist statement to show the movement from darkness into light in my work. There is a gilding tradition in Japan dating back to the 15th century, which also inspired the use of leaf, as you can see in the example on the left from the Kano school. The ginkgo leaf is a symbol of resilience, endurance, and longevity in Japan. The ginkgo tree can live for 1,000 years, and profoundly, 4 ginkgo trees survived the atomic bomb at Hiroshima and are still growing today. I liked the contrast of symbolism with the ephemeral cherry blossoms and the seemingly unchanging ginkgo. Now let's switch from symbolism to process. I experimented with a number of ways to use oil and leaf together. For Geisha 1, I completely gilded the gesso board with squares of Manetti silver leaf. Next, using raw umber oil paint and a spot of lamp black, I painted the image of the geisha and ginkgo leaves, indicating a range of values. In the next step, I used a thin layer of white and raw umber to begin the skin tones. That's in step 2. I was very interested in how to reproduce skin tones from underneath a thick coat of white makeup. So I built up the value and the color areas of the complexion. I used Vasari brand oil paints in titanium white, French Indian red extra pale, French ochre Havana, French golden ochre extra pale, Rosso, Ercolano extra pale, rosebud, capuchin red, alizarin crimson, Gamblin Portland gray medium, and Gamblin radiant blue. I also began painting in the hair using lamp black, gray, and blue. These steps greatly oversimplify the process, but I hope it gives you an idea of how I approached the work of art. In step 4, I began painting the flower hair decoration and the kimono. I made the flowers on the kimono cherry blossoms to go along with the theme. Unhappy with the drab blue of the kimono that you see in step 4, I switched to a blend of jade green and video blue extra pale. I refined the cherry blossoms and added gold leaf to the leaves on the kimono and the gold hair ornament. The ginkgo leaves, the obi, and the undergarment are still the original raw umber from the first layer, but with some additional value refinement. I approached Geisha 2 a little differently. I used a prepared wood panel which requires 2 layers of white oil ground with careful sanding in between applications. After preparing the surface of the wood panel, I did the initial raw umber painting first, and then gilded around the figure using odd shapes of silver instead of the Kano school squares. With etching tools, I evened the edges around the figure. Using a stencil, I made a decorative pattern on the kimono with a 2H pencil. I added the first layer of skin tone on the neck and white makeup on her back. I had a piece of handmade Japanese paper that I wanted to use as inspiration for the pattern on the back of the obi that looks like a little backpack. So I spent time adding that to the best of my ability because it's a very complex pattern. For number 3, I began that layer with the kimono color. This time I went all out on the jade green. I started to design on the collar, but I whited it out in step 4. I continued to build layers on the neck and back. Using lamp black and blue, I began the second layer on the hair, which was done in raw umber first. And then I continued building the skin tone on the neck and ear and the geisha makeup on the small area of the face and the back. I decided I didn't like the little yellow cherry blossoms on the backpack and made them red, orange, and pink instead as a complement to the jade green. I gilded the kimono design and the obi using gold leaf. Oops, got some on her back. So I had to place a layer of titanium white and let it dry. And then I finished off the obi with Funzel's dual-tipped gold and silver acrylic markers. That worked out really well. I was surprised, but they worked really well. And then I added small cherry blossom design to the white collar, just to give a little bit of color there. In the final step, I added violet to the shadow on the neck, added more color to the hair ornaments, I should say, improved the folds inside the back collar of the kimono, and repainted them. The large scroll was made for a different show that I had at the Fine Arts Building in Chicago around the idea of loss of home. I thought the theme worked well with my current theme of the preciousness of impermanence. Loss of home reflected a challenging time in my life when I had to sell a beloved home and move elsewhere. It was created during the period when I lived in New York City, another challenging loss of home experience for me. The large scroll represents universal home. The ratios of the various sections of the scroll are all based on the size of the artwork. I followed these guidelines to the letter in the production of all my scrolls, which I've made several of them. Using the correct adhesives is important too, and PVA is a good choice for making scrolls. When you're using fabric, which this scroll also uses fabric, I use 3M brand mounting adhesive, which comes in a roll. The main difference between my work and a legitimate Japanese work is that instead of ink paintings, I used my own graphite drawings to dramatize complex emotions around this period in my life. The traditional Japanese home is designed with a central focus called the tokonoma, where a flower arrangement, a ceramic piece, and most important, a hanging scroll are placed for contemplation. Another subject that captivates me is the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, which was full of bustling life one moment and completely annihilated the next. All three of the drawings that are in the show on this theme, well, they're not actually all on this theme, but they are on the theme of natural disasters, let's put it that way. They were all made during the pandemic, however, and reflect natural hazards that can change our lives in an instant. The drawings are done in pan pastel and white and black charcoal pencils. The little skull is a graphite drawing of a ceramic talisman found in Pompeii to bring the owner protection. It symbolizes both hope and despair. Tethered reflected the way I felt not being able to see family or teach in person during the pandemic. On the right, No Escape also reflects the inescapable feeling of anxiety I had in the early months of the pandemic. After the Oak Lawn tornado of 1967, which I experienced as a child when I was home alone after school, Tornadoes often show up in my dreams as monstrous forms during periods of high anxiety. My recent portraits have been of family members and friends who are dear to me. There are 2 portraits in this exhibit. This one of my mother. I have especially been contemplating the preciousness of moments with her because she's 97 years old now. And I have been contemplating the passage of time. My mother's face, still lovely to this day, suggests the beauty of aging that our society tends not to see. In traditional Japanese aesthetics, that concept of wabi-sabi is a worldview centered on refined austerity, wabi, and subdued taste, sabi. And it also incorporates the beauty of age, or also an item that has been worn. So this imperfection that reflects the presence of the human hand or time. And there is a beauty in that. The universal idea of moving from darkness into light, expressed through the human form, recurs as a theme in my work, and this is part of my artist statement. I explore the transcendence of the physical into the non-material, as well as aging, death, and renewal. There is a duality and paradox between the physical and the spiritual that dancers especially embody, so I've held a fascination for dance my entire life. My art seeks to resonate with others and inspire release from heavy emotions. Although I have come close, I don't believe I have truly captured this concept in my work yet, and knowing that gives me the impetus and inspiration to continue working toward that ideal. I hope you'll take a moment to go to my website at www.deniselaurenvisualart.com and join my mailing list. I don't send out a lot of things. Sometimes I send out information on art history, or when I'm giving an art history presentation and where it's going to be and when it's going to be, and also when I'm exhibiting. So please take a look at www.deniselaurenvisualart.com and sign up for my mailing list. Thank you again.